preparing for live and got it, and we're just setting it up. This is all, and I'm about to sneeze, I think. Just, yeah. All right. So we are live. We are live. 80th mom done. Today we are introducing my 80th mom. I'm so excited. Just 20 more moms to bring to this book, and we are 100 moms interviewed and their stories brought out. And all of us have lived this in the last 100 days of my wanting to do this. I have a very beautiful mom yet again. And you know that I am trying to get all kinds of mom in. So we have a mom from the corporate world, and she's spiritual bent is there within her. That's what inspires me to bring her here, because of my connection with spirituality and the way she is. And Terri, welcome to this book and this interview. Uh, I'm so excited that you are here. And I want you to introduce yourself, because I always tell everybody that the mom who lives the story tells her story the best. So I am nobody to read any biodatas or anything about them. I want you to come and tell the world about what your story has been, who's Terri and what it is, and then we move forward, you as a mom, and then we'll take the interview ahead.
Great. Well, thank you first off for the invitation. And when you explained to me what your project was, I just can't wait to see and hear some of the stories of other mothers. And I think it's such an important connection that you're trying to make, which is we're not any of us alone in the process of being mothers. And I think as many of the stories obviously will help build those connections and be inspiring, I'm sure, to all the people that, not just maybe moms even, that will listen to them. So I'm Terri Bressenham, and I was spent my entire career as a healthcare executive. I'm super passionate about healthcare, and I still feel it's not anywhere close to where we need it to be, in the sense that it needs to be more affordable, more accessible, and better outcomes. But first and foremost, I am a mom. It's the title I'm most proud of. CEO is fun and interesting, but it pales in comparison to the title as a mom. I have 3 daughters. My husband and I met in college, and he has 4 sisters. So I grew up with only brothers, but I'm now surrounded by only women. And that's an awesome experience as well, unique and awesome. And I'm now I retired from corporate life, and I'm now working as a consultant to startup companies in the healthcare space. Again, still believing that technology can solve some of the woes of healthcare. And in my spare time, I do many different things. I love to be creative. I love to work on our farm and grow, plants, organic plants. And if I have any vacation, it's usually I'm going to meet one of my relatives, because I'm very connected to my family, my extended family. So that's my 30-second view.
I know 30 seconds last so many years lived, and just said so simply in 30 seconds, Terri. I definitely forgot to mention that my connection actually when I met you was also with growing plants, because at that time I was learning how to grow plants, and I remember you telling me that like I was literally killing them at that time, and you told me that they're not getting too much air because of that red soil that was there.
Yeah.
And I remember you and your husband teaching me that how to just put a little air into that soil right there. And that was a very important lesson. And from there, I began my journey of growing plants. So definitely, and of course, you gifted us when you left these big.
Yeah, we gave you one of our planters that we had at our house there in Bangalore.
Oh, yeah. we grew in Bangalore for sure. We grew a lot of greens in it, because we got into health as well as a space, and I loved it. I was very possessive about them, because I just love that somebody has created them on their own, and loved them so much to keep I think you grew tomatoes in that or something like that.
We grew all kinds of things, but yes, tomatoes was one of our favorite crops. Right. Different kinds of tomatoes, yeah.
Right. And recently, even your sunflower, that sunflower fascinated me so much that I'm so fascinated. And I just think that's what That's what brings if we continue to live our passions as we are growing, as we are living, as and we don't put that, okay, there will be some time to do that, someday we will do it.
Mm.
We have to start living now, and here and now is where we start creating our life. And that's where the inspiration for this book is going ahead for moms, to say that start creating your lives now, create this
Yeah.
life here. Don't wait just because we've had children to that time when it will come and we will start living. So your
Yeah.
journey in the corporate world, and you raising your children, let's talk about that, because that's
Okay.
what this book is all about, and that's why we're inspiring a lot of mothers who go through guilt that we are working and their children, how will we manage.
Yeah.
And now COVID has got another level
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
because mums are sitting at home trying to do what they have to, and then kids are right next door, and it's getting a lot of this thing. So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
to the mums. Your
Well, I think, working and being a mother is, especially when your children are young, it's a tremendous toll on you physically.
right, right,
And when your kids get older, they're more challenging emotionally. So you have kind of these different phases of being a mother and a full-time, if you have full-time job or demanding job. And I think when I look back on it, there literally are times when I kind of ask myself, like, how did I make it? Because it was just crazy. I think if someone had been secretly videotaping our household, the chaos that would ensue on certain mornings, when things, and you look back, you think it was chaos in some fashion. And but I think, like in business and strategy in business, you look at the long view. And I think that's one thing that I distinctly remember continuing to think about whenever I felt like towards the end of my rope, if you will, which was, remember why you're doing this. Remember
right,
why that you love this. When your kids are, when they reach the age when they'll leave home, do you want to be somebody that, left the workforce and stayed at home? Or do you want to be somebody that has this now very exciting life, then you're off doing more adventures? And that the fact that your kids are leaving is a good thing. You accomplished your, task as a mother, but you're not left with nothing to do, or kind of an empty household can bring a lot of women, I think, some grief because they feel like they've lost that element. In fact, recently I was back visiting some friends. Their daughter is the same age as our daughter, and she was getting married. And we were talking, and my friend was this very high ranking global marketing person for Microsoft. But when they moved to this literally a small village in Wisconsin in the US, she decided not to go to work and stay home with her kids. And we
right.
lived next door to them. So she said, I would see the limo coming to pick you up, to take you off to some exciting business meeting somewhere in the world. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm staying at home and my kids are going to be, better taken care of and secure and such. And when we were back for this wedding, she said, I have to tell you, um, now I look at our lives and I look at our kids, and first off, I can't tell a difference between your kids and my kids. They all turned out really well, so staying at home didn't necessarily bring out a different outcome, if you will. And she said, I'm just so envious of the fact that you're still, very, very engaged and doing lots of really interesting things. She said, I have to just kind of make the most that I can, but I don't have the same opportunities because I didn't spend 30 years working. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that hits me, a little as well, because I'm so immersed in this project, and I this whole thing that we feel so guilty. And you said something very interesting, that she said that there is no difference between your kids and mine. Everything
Mm.
turned out to be the same, and at the same time, there is such a pull all the time, Terry, that we should do it, we shouldn't do it, we should
Yeah.
do it. But what I've realized with this project is that when mothers show up in their full strength and power, actually they give more power to their children to keep showing up in their
I
life,
totally agree with that.
because they learn that that's the only way to be, that's the only
Mhm.
way to be. And so my older one, who's 8 years old, I had started also pulling back from photography a lot, but I was still working.
Yeah,
And 8-year-old just told me when the younger one got burnt, and I was in this whole thing of getting pulled that no, I need to take a little longer break, stop this project a little. And at the same time, I was like, no, I have committed 100 moms,
yeah,
I must
yeah,
continue. It's just, and even that taking that 1 hour or 2 hours in a day was feeling like a lot for me. And then my older one came and said, don't give up, like, don't give up. It's
yeah,
80 to 100.
yeah,
Like, you've already done 80. And after that, I just basically have to go live for 20 more. And then all work will be done at my pace, the
yeah,
book is created, etc. And then he taught me that I taught him that you should not give up. And I
yeah.
have to go back, because if today I tell him that no, you're very important and give up,
Mm.
he will not learn the fact that you need to keep moving on. When things settle, there is a break.
Absolutely.
When things settle, and then you need to keep moving on. And then I keep telling the world this also, that when I used to ask him when he was young, when he was very young, and I was still a very active photographer, he used to tell people when he was 3 that, oh, my mom is in Google. I don't know, somehow he got that my mom
Mm.
is in Google. And then by the time the second one came, his statement changed to, oh, my mom just takes care of me. And now his statement is, my mom is saving mothers across the
Yeah,
world. So I just think that we don't have to tell them anything. They just, like, he
you
had
can
forgotten
observe.
for that 2 years when I was totally sitting in COVID, because it was my younger one was 4 months old and I was sitting at home, no other option as a photographer also to move out. He really thought that I was all about that, and that's why I realized that we need to start showing up, even if the staying at home is reason is the children. Even moving out should be the same reason,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's how
Well,
we
I
are.
think if, every situation is different, and I think you have to be authentic and genuine of yourself and of
Right,
your, circumstances.
right,
But I think part of the time that my friends, at least who have left the workplace, it wasn't it wasn't necessarily the external environments making them feel like guilty or whatever, but although they were feeling that way, I think it was more that they didn't really love their job so much. So leaving was an easier option,
right. That's
balance of
interesting as
things.
well. That's
Yeah.
interesting as well. So then we come down to what we were talking about before, Terry, that
Sure.
if you start living your life and start living the things with the things that you love to do, then that also gives you a strength. And as you said, the external pull also comes to keep moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes sense that what you're saying, because I think that's the gift of a message that we've just given, that not only it's a choice between staying at home or not staying at home, it's also then when you align yourself with your passion, it will pull you back, no matter what.
Yeah.
So what, like, and I like the fact that you just said that it was a chaos, when you were raising your children,
Yeah.
and your acceptance of this chaos has come now, or you had accepted that chaos even then and you're okay with it now.
No, it came later, it's a bit of what you were saying. I wish if I could tell my younger self something, would be to don't be so guilty about all these things. I mean, we set so many expectations of ourselves, our spouse, or as a friend, as a mother, as a wife. I think we have to, first off, we just have to love and trust ourselves first.
Right,
We're all of us trying to do the best that we can. Sometimes we fall short, but often it's not for a malign reason. It just happened that way because of whatever was going on. And so instead of beating ourselves up over that, we just say, hey, you know what, I was giving it my best. It didn't come, I didn't happen to do the right thing, but I'll move on and not dwell too much on that. Because
right,
when you do, that's when you become more questioning yourself, you're undermining your own, belief and systems of, what you're doing. And I think that's not healthy. So yes, if I could tell my younger self, I would tell them it's going to be chaotic. It's going to be, you're going to be exhausted most of the time. But hang in there, because you're doing two really hard things at the same time. Being a mother, I had three kids, under the age of 5, and I had, this increasing responsibility at work, which took me, more and more out of my home because I was traveling for work. So in hindsight, I wish I would have known that. I would mention one other thing that, and I've shared this story so some people may know it, but before my first child was born, my mother found out she was terminally ill.
Right.
And it's a tragic story, except for the fact that it was an incredible gift as a new mother that's never left me. And that was, she had literally the same length of time the doctor estimated to live as I did until my child was going to be born. So they were exactly at the same time.
Wow.
So, and unfortunately, she passed away just before my daughter was born. But what I've realized since was the fact that under the most terrible circumstance, and I just had gotten a new promotion, so I had this new team of people and this project that was in trouble. I was pregnant for the first time, and I didn't know if I would do well with pregnancy, or, didn't know anything about pregnancy, in fact, at least related to myself. And then my mother, who I adored, and she was this amazing person, was, rapidly declining towards death at the same time. So it was just very, this confluence of emotions and stress. But what came out of that was, anytime after that, when I would feel, stressed, or would feel like it's too much, or, I'm not doing the things I was supposed to do, or, the kids aren't right, or whatever the case may be, I could catch myself, and I could go back to that moment and just say, listen, you went through this hellacious period of time,
Right.
and you grew from that, and don't forget that. And, don't forget to keep things in perspective. Don't forget to focus on the most important things, and forget about, these small things.
Right.
Don't forget that you're actually really resilient
Right.
as a person, as a mother.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I think there's things, experiences in each of our lives that, if you look at them, especially the hard ones, what came out of that is, it was a test of you, and you learned from that.
Right.
And if you can remember, a little bit at times when you're feeling perhaps a little inadequate or low or whatever, it's like, well, listen, I can manage anything. I can weather any storm.
Right.
And I'll get through this storm as well, whatever that may be.
Right. And that's why this book is becoming very important to me and to many moms, because they need to hear this, Terry. They need to hear
Yeah,
what happens is, when you are in that situation, when things are chaotic, and and especially in a country like India or Eastern world, when you're surrounded by more family, extended
right.
families, visitors, and things are very close knitted, mums feel very judged. They feel
Yeah.
that
And they
they
are, by the
and
way.
they are
Yeah.
judged, and a lot of times passing comments like, we could manage it, you can't manage this, you don't have to work, we didn't work. Comments like that come, and then they play on a mother again and again, and then it's total madness. So India is changing as well with nuclear families, but for somebody, a country like India, the transition is a little different right now,
Mm.
especially my generation, because we come from a close knitted family, so we're very used to being around a lot of family, to now going into the world where only two of us raising children are there. And then
Yeah.
there is a lot of chaos. I think by the next generation it'll settle down and they will take charge
Yeah.
of not be able to do it. But what you just said, if your younger self, is what the today's younger mothers need to know, what in the
Mm.
transition period. And COVID has brought another kind of pressure on mothers, young mothers, and they are battling a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
in this whole thing, the expectation from the outside world around them is still that she should be able to manage. But this time
Yeah.
it's hit in another level, that there is
Right.
it's become 24 hours. The job has become 24 hours, the children have become 24 hours together. That's become a lot. And that's why this project needed to come out even more now, because we
Right.
need to hear that chaos is okay. We need to hear that taking a break is okay. We need to hear that moving forward in your dream is okay. And this is just a phase that will, move off.
Yeah.
And also that if you don't shine today, your children will know now, because even more than ever, they are with you more. They're not going to school, right? India schools are not open. They're with us for the last 2 years. They are watching us even more closely. They're not going away for six
Oh,
hours.
absolutely. Yeah.
And then the responsibility, like even if you have breakdowns today, and because I was a 4 month had a 4 month old in COVID and a 6 year old, even if you feel like breaking down, you have to keep holding yourself, because or if you do slip out a little and you feel so guilty again, you're like, they're watching and this should not be, because there's no space left.
Yeah.
You have to always hold that ground of being a mom. So that's why I felt that today is the time to take this even out even more, to tell them, mom, that let your children also know what the reality is. Let them know that this is the struggle of a mom, and it will only help them to know that how she managed to release it and then collect herself. And then even in a pandemic, this is what happened, because this is the experience that's been gifted to them by the
Yeah.
universe.
Well, I was
And
going to say, through example, you're also teaching your children how to handle difficult situations. They
right,
will have difficult situations in their life. And if they can see that, during these crazy times, you pivoted and adapted and tried to keep your sense of humor about you as, as things were falling apart across, the world actually.
yeah,
And I would say that's another thing is just when you are with your children in these tough situations, I think it's important to help them see and learn how to handle, how to break a problem down, how to think about your options,
right,
talk out loud more about how you're solving it.
right,
Um, and also don't forget to have some degree of humor in the situation. I mean,
right,
if kids know that things can be really challenging, but that doesn't mean they have to be sad and angry about them. You can make light of them, or where it's appropriate. But it's something I think even I see in my kids today, when something's gone wrong or they feel really bad, somewhere in our conversation they'll still find levity or make a joke about it. And they said, because that's what you used to do. You used to remember to look on the bright side or try to find something that
right,
was humorous in a bad situation.
right. Right, and also just to add to that, Terry, even if you do break down, even if you do, feel angry and all that, that's also fine, because this is just another times, and you can't keep holding yourself up very tight all the time and thinking so much that there is no space. And the stories that have come out, Terry, of mothers, the kind of struggles they, and some of the like some of the time, like mothers are living what's happened to them even before they became moms.
Yeah.
And when chaos hits them, all that comes up, added to the whole thing, because they didn't have the opportunity to deal with it, or they didn't know that they had that
Yeah.
kind of a trauma stuck inside of them, and then they deal with a tough situation, and then this whole thing starts to form a lot of thing, and the mother gets stuck. And I have realized this through self-portrait. It's unbelievable that photography has made me realize that I could see that few moments when I could create those pictures for these mothers, because I realized very early that I am not talking to mothers before my shoots. I will not talk to them, because
Yeah.
I was taught to talk to them, but the minute I started talking to them, it made me see what they saw in themselves, which was not okay, because they
Yeah.
always told me what they did not want in the picture than what they wanted. And
Yeah.
then that helped me to create and show them this beautiful woman that was in them. And Terry, it's a record, and I'm very proud of this record on mine, that whenever I have given a picture or my work to moms, they have looked at it and say, "That's me, like that's me." And I
That's
look
cool.
gorgeous, like I look amazing, and without criticism, and all the same things they were criticizing suddenly goes away, because this inner light emerges, and they
Yeah.
are just like in there, not even ready. Some of them not even ready, and I've taken these pictures of them hugging their children, and then they see that and they blow it up in their house and they keep
Yeah.
as a benchmark. So,
Yeah.
so that's where this project is. And what do you feel like? Did you take a lot of pictures with your children? Did you, or you just thought that that was just an extra job to wanting to get ready and take pictures and
No, I did. I did take a lot of pictures. And of course, I'm in my 60s. So I was using a camera with film in it. And you have to take the film to get it processed. And, you would take 20 pictures and you might have, one that's half
yes,
decent, so
I studied on that
um,
camera. I studied on
yeah,
film camera. Yeah.
yeah. So now it's kind of, of course, with a smartphone, you can take pictures not, nonstop. And I'm envious in a way because I look at the few pictures that I have, especially when my kids were young, and they're so cute, and you remember that sweet time. Yes, you've forgotten all the chaos and the exhaustion and things that you were dealing with at the time. All you remember is the sweet essence of what that was. So
Right.
the pictures, I wish I had many, many more, but the few that I have, I really do treasure. Yeah.
Yeah, and like my dad was, he's a hobby photographer, and how this just before this project, I was being interviewed and I spoke so much about my father, and then I was
Mm.
asked, "Can I get some pictures of you and him in the childhood?" And I was 100% sure I have. Terry, I was 100% sure, because he was a hobby photographer. I was 100% sure he has some pictures with me, and you know what? I didn't even find one
Yeah.
with him and me. He was always behind the cameras. He was always taking pictures. We had a big joint family. We had 7 kids in the house. He had photographed everybody, and somehow I think he passed it on. His hobby was photography, but people said the same thing about his work, saying what you bring in people, nobody else does. And probably later I realized that I've taken it from him. But you know what?
Hmm.
I couldn't find one. And then I felt the loss. And then I felt that, he's 75, and if I lose him today, I have nothing to hold on to, pass on to my children from my childhood to tell. And now I take so many pictures whenever he's there of myself with him. And
Yeah.
strange enough, me being a photographer as well, I have not taken 20 years any pictures with him. And that shows that he always wanted to be behind the cameras, and he never showed the
Yeah.
the,
Right.
the want to be in front of the camera. And that's what a lot of mothers don't show, the want to be in front of the camera, because they keep saying that we want to be behind it. And of course, my work has gone much deeper. We have Debbie here, Gia, and Francis watching us. So,
Okay.
but my work has realized that there's also reluctancy of mothers when they are in that zone to want to be in front. There's also a lot of reluctancy for many, many mothers. And that's why I want these inspiring stories like you to come out, that keep showing up. You have to be there. And for showing up, if you have to take care of yourself, you have to do so many things to added to what the chaos is there of raising
Mhm.
children. And that's why I'm urging through this project that don't miss out from your children's dream. It's a big miss for them. It's a big
Yeah.
miss for them when the self bad image that we bring to this world after we become mothers as a gift, which I found, which was across the world, the
Yeah.
criticism, so that's why I asked you, and I ask all mothers: have you taken a lot of pictures of yourself with the children? Have you made that effort
No,
there,
no.
there? And that's usually the answer is no. Usually the answer is no, and your answer is very graceful no. A lot of mothers are like, oh, we hated it totally. We just didn't like ourselves, and we didn't want to be in pictures. And now what's showing the behavior, because you love behavioral part of people and you like to know that it takes a nanosecond to delete a picture, Terry. It takes a nanosecond. We take a picture, we look at it, and we delete. And I always
Yeah.
ask you, what did you not like in that woman that you just deleted it in 1 second? You didn't even want to look at it. You didn't even want to say what you didn't like. You didn't even want to Watch. You
Yeah.
just saw
Yeah.
and you delete it. Delete, 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 delete. And that's it. Or don't be in front. If in front, show it to me before you even post. So there's
Mm.
so much happening in the self-image around it. And I think this
Well,
work
and
will.
I think it's even harder today with social media
Yes,
because
yes,
we present a very artificial, idealistic, um, unachievable, image. People are, I've even been struck by being in a restaurant and, seeing someone spend 20 minutes taking a picture of themselves.
yeah.
And I think, value system wise, it's so unappealing to me to think someone's so vain, you know.
In fact, that you said that, and that's what struck. Like I was. You just said Wayne, and a friend of mine. I was talking to him, and he's like, "Your project is amazing, but I think the moms today have become vain, and that's why
Mm.
they are so." So I told him something. I said, "Okay, let's look at one step deeper, and I want to bring this research out as well. That it's if you look at the behavior behind, they're trying very hard to like themselves, and that's
Mhm.
why they're 20 minutes of that picture. They're
Yeah.
trying very hard to be accepted by the social media world that's putting the pressure on them, as
Yeah.
we discussed, to be this woman that, so it's not the action, but what's happening in the subconscious mind that's bringing that. And then interestingly, when I spoke to women who are their 70s, 75, and 60s, and I spoke to them, and I'm like, they're like, oh, my mother hated being in front of the camera. Even if it came out occasionally, she said, like, I don't want it. Even if
Yeah.
it came out, this, like, she just didn't want to, it was like something which was running for generations. Now, even
Hmm.
more obvious than before. And that's what I've got, you know. I'm
Yeah.
looking at that, and then the ripple effect on the children of trying to get that one selfie, one angle, that one pout. Can you imagine?
Right.
All the teenagers just think that the same pout, the same angle, and the same thing everywhere in the world they think is the angle that's left, and you see them like across the world doing that. And again, rather than, I'm just fascinated with it. Like, I look at
Mhm.
it with fascination, and I'm like, what's happening in your head that you're thinking that this angle is you? What about the hugs? What about the screams? What about throwing water? What about
Yeah. Right.
stuff like that in the
Yeah.
pictures? So
Yeah.
interesting you bought that, and that's what the effort is, and that's why you're also here as a book, because we will bring your whole thing that you. I think you had a. We must talk about that as well. That you had a
Mm.
conversation about the social media and how it's bringing the pressure that it is on today's moms and women
Yeah.
across. So
And
let's
young
like,
people. I think
yeah,
young people too. I mean, well, I think about when I grew up, the sphere of comparison, if you will, was just the other kids in my neighborhood.
right,
And, there was always some point someone had a, better set of shoes or went on a better vacation but, it was a small-ish group of comparison. Today, an individual can be compared to anyone else in the world on these platforms. And
all right,
so there's no chance that you're going to be feeling good about you if you're comparing yourself. There's thousands of images out there that would make you feel inadequate or, less well off. Or so I think that's really the unhealthy part of those connections of social media is that it's only presenting the best side of the story or even an artificial side of the story. And
right.
that's not the way life really is.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, the effort through this book to start showing up authentically, just the way you are, who you are, how you
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
and not get stuck. And interestingly, there was another mom who was here. She has 6 kids, and she works for mom. She has a she's been working to uplift mothers and work with mothers. And I was talking to her, and then she said that there is also a comparison to this becoming this perfect mom who wears coordinated clothes with her children, who keeps
Yeah.
home very clean, who keeps everything tidied up, because and then she puts those pictures off, and they like, you know, that's where some reality check needs to come. And the same
Mhm.
platform that is bringing that, more of this has to come out, where the same platform which has an opportunity through technology to bring issues and situations which are absolutely normal. And that's why I have had interviews where, Terry, there's a 2-year-old hanging on through and through the interview. In the interview, she's
Yeah.
climbing up, she was teasing me, she was taking out her tongue, she was jumping, she was pulling her mom's
Yeah.
hair, she was still talking. And I was like, let her, and both of us were like, she's just good, she's always there around. Like, my children
Yeah.
come in and go and tell me about the tennis in the middle of my interview,
Yeah.
and I let them be, because that's part of the whole thing of being at home and working.
Yeah.
And I don't know when the corporate world will. I think the corporate world is also getting okay slowly
I was
with
going to
that.
say, I think today it's a very different scenario. I mean, it's not all the way there, but certainly after 2 years of a lockdown, people are understanding of, whether it's children or dogs or,
Yeah.
it a spouse or, so it's, or someone comes to the door, a delivery at the door, do you get up and answer? So anyway, I think people have become much more accommodating. Not everyone, but I would say a lot of people have,
Rohit
which is
has
okay.
taken meetings right in the middle of very important meetings, when my younger one has crawled in and he has taken meetings.
Yeah.
He's being the younger one in his hand, because and they all know him, because he will just not take a no for an answer from Rohit sometimes. And he will be there, and Rohit will be in a finance meeting, and sometimes he uses his jokes with using his child in the thing to say some points which are very serious, because he's like, even he can understand what I'm saying, something like that. And I see that integration happening, and I like that, because I think when dads have started to like that, dads are
Mhm.
okay getting okay with the kids coming in.
Yeah.
And like, even as simple as wanting to go to the bathroom, sometimes Rohit had to, he's like, no, I will only go with my dad. And Rohit is like, all right, there is no option, I have to leave in the middle of the meeting and go. And for somebody like Rohit, if you know him, like,
Yeah.
he's like a serious this thing, for him to have that as a breakthrough during COVID is a gift, because now he says, I'm used to that. When I go to office now, sometimes I feel that life is missing around me. It's just so
Yeah.
great with
Yeah.
just walls and like not no
It's
chaos.
funny you say that because my husband, um, has said, because I had to travel so much for my work,
Right.
and I with several of my kids, I was on a plane, like 2 weeks after I gave birth, and
Wow.
he says, when he looks back on this, he said, in a way, thank you, because if you had been at home, I would have played a different role. But because you were gone, I had to do everything. But as a result of that, I became, really good at it, and I loved it. And I know I'm
Right.
a different father because I had this, forcing function, if you will, in the initial space. But um, just another funny side story, because with three girls, he had to try to do their hair, and I would come home from, some trip and come in the house, and there'd be one with, pigtail up here and one down here, and their clothes would be kind of mismatched, and I would make a comment, and he goes, but Terri, they're happy, and
Yeah.
that's all that's important.
Yeah.
The fact
Yeah.
that they don't have straight pigtails is inconsequential when it comes to our kids.
Right. Right. Anyways, this book is becoming so beautiful, and I think we have definitely
I
put a.
can't wait to read all the stories.
Oh, yes. I mean, you have to hear some of them.
Yeah.
They've taught me so much in the last 100 years, and they did. And as I mentioned to you, and I mentioned to everybody again and again, that when my child got burned, this book was a test on me, and it was a little
Mhm.
test, because every mother came back to me with so many stories, and I was just kept on saying, if they can do it, so can I. And I suddenly found myself like, wow, that was the vision of my book. If they can do it, so can I. That's how I
Yeah.
started. And we want to bring this out even more now, because the mothers need to know that they are not alone. They all are dealing with it together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the past, moms have dealt with these extraordinary situations and only, aligned themselves with the mother pulse and then started shining. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited to like finish these 100 interviews, start creating this whole thing. And more than that, I want to tell you that I am very confident now, even more, that self portrait is a tool of transformation. It is
Hmm.
going to be one of the tools of transformations. Nobody's really done it in photography, so I can't say it was done. But because it's a very new path, I did start doing research, and I found that painters dealt with depressions by doing self portraits. They dealt with doing self portraits, and it's been all done in the past, in the history. And now, when some of the mothers, they call me and they say, "You become a catalyst in our dreams," or there was a clog, and it just that clog opened up, and we started expressing ourselves, and we started living our dreams. Or
Wow.
they've started saying that we cried through the process of writing the workbook and finding out to have, because again, I'm not saying that we want portraits. We don't want to know how you look. We want to know who
Yeah.
you are, and to express that in the book. Mothers are Terri, like it makes me cry because I've seen mothers going again and again. Shikha, I've done it. There's one mom, Terri. Her name is Terri as well.
Yeah.
She's gone 7 times or 6 times to just get that picture, and she's in her 50s, I think in 50s or something, and she's jumping on this big log, like she
Okay.
jumped up in the air, like excellent, like that. And I was looking at her in her 50s. She's done that, and then she's at like the resolution is not okay, she went again, and then she did again, because that's the way she wanted to express herself, right in the middle of the forest, jumping up. And
Yeah.
then she's finally done it. And recently I was like, I love the shot, and I'm just hoping when it comes on design, it's a little blur, but it works, because even the blur works, because
Yeah.
all that I'm technically telling her, because it just made me shiver. And then she's like, the log is gone, and I've expressed myself. So the log is gone, and she found a final picture, and the log was like taken away. And
Oh,
it was
really?
a huge tree that had fallen. It was a huge.
Wow.
She was like that
Okay.
tiny in a big log. From a mom who is sending me with her blindfolded, and this made me cry as well. Laurette is, if she's going to see the replay, Laurette went in the cold, in like it was so freezing cold, Terri, and she got a T-shirt saying "a big mom hug," because she
Okay.
feels this project is like a big mom hug across the world. And she
Hmm.
blindfolded herself and took her husband, and she's like, "Listen, I'll be on the road, so you'll have to just like hold the camera, and this is how I'm curating my picture." And she's got this, like she went to different places only in a t-shirt in bitter cold, like it was really cold, and then she took that picture with, opening her arms like that. And then one of her pictures had sunlight falling on her in the woods, and I was just like, oh my,
Wow.
like, and these are
Very creative.
stories, because that's her message to the world. And I can't even tell you what all pictures that are coming. And I'm going to still work with a lot of them, because
Yeah.
and my mothers are not giving up, Terri. They're not giving
Yeah.
up, because they send me a picture, then okay, next second, then suddenly when they see themselves expressed, they're like, oh God, this is who we are. So
Yeah.
the reason I'm saying this is that just in last 100 days, self-portrait is transforming people. It's releasing
Hmm.
people. And one day I
Well, I
will.
think it's the combination of the conversation about, exploring this idea, this topic,
Yeah,
and then you ask someone to take a picture of themselves now with that new frame of reference. And I think that's where maybe some of the magic is happening, is people aren't just seeing themselves as this one-dimensional,
right.
thing.
Yeah,
They're thinking about this connection to other mothers, and what was motherhood about. And
right, right.
yeah. Yeah.
And then that's why it's going to become a tool, because this is not stopping at mothers in the future. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be
Yeah.
reading books of different issues and using self-portrait as the way to journal,
Express. Yeah.
express and journal now,
Yeah.
rather than writing all the time.
Yeah.
Give visuals to the next generation of who you were as a gift, so that they can celebrate you in the visual. And because we are visual beings, that would be priceless. That would be
Yeah.
totally priceless.
Yeah.
Um, Terri, what's your dream? What's your dream? We have Vilma as well. Thank you, Vilma, for joining in. Debbie says it's the best feeling in the world live. Yes, they all are mums
Yeah.
who are tuning in and to go to see the replay. So Terri, the book is called 100 Self Portraits, 100 Dreams of Mothers Who Dared to Express.
Mm.
That's what the tagline is, of mothers who dared to express. And if I may ask you, what is your dream? What is Terri's dream?
Well, one of my dreams, which relates to this conversation, was as I was going through the choices that I was making as this, you know, intense business person and then a mother, and I would talk to myself and talk to my husband and talk to other friends, and one of the things I would say is I hope I'm making the right choices, but I won't really know until my kids are adults and they can reflect back on this, and only they will know whether this worked or not.
Right.
And so now my kids are all in their 20s, late 20s now. And if you ask them, that they'll all say, if we could have had more of her time, we would have liked that, but we're so proud of what she's done. And it's so cool, the chances that we've had to live around the world and do all these things. So that was one of my dreams, which is that when my kids became adults, when they could think for themselves and understand and reflect, that they would say that it was okay. So that one's been satisfied. The other dream is related to my passion, which is to try to make healthcare more accessible. There's 5.8 million people in the world who lack access to quality care. And I just simply think that's unfair. And I'd like to try to do something on a scaled fashion. So that's my big dream, which is to affect healthcare for people that don't have access to it.
Yeah, and I think you've already been living that dream for quite some time and still walking, and a lot more
Yeah.
work to be done.
Unfinished projects. Yes.
Yes, yeah, and you're already working, and that's the inspiration, Terri. That's the inspiration.
Mm.
Let's start living your dream now, and not wait for it to start when things settle, because things never settle. Things never settle. Things keep moving forward. Something or the other will keep coming on, and we need to just keep moving forward. And especially as moms, because we are a big population, responsible to bring out another big population out,
Yeah.
and we are there inspiring things. We need to be very, very, even more responsible, not only to provide love and care and everyday care to children, but to become that light that they look at, and then they can, follow it to the world that becomes a better place.
Well, I think, a book like this reminds many women of how many amazing stories there are. And also, I think just realization that you should trust yourself. Deep inside, you do know what to do. You may not recognize that, but we have this instinct and intuition to go and do the right things.
Right.
We just need to trust that, even when someone's being critical of us or telling us we've fallen short, right, of expectations.
And something new that is coming out in this book, which I realized in my yesterday's interview, Terri, before we wrap up, and I must say, we had a mom from Egypt, and now she's in Saudi Arabia. And if you look at her interview, I mean, like, I was looking at it, I was getting this goosebump looking at her. That who in the world is saying that women sitting in Saudi Arabia are not powerful, who are not creating change, who are not doing things because they're in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
She was with so much dream and so much passion, and she's already doing so much change, and she's working in the world of education for children, and she's bringing out stuff. And she studied in a Pakistani school, and now she is wants to be a transformational coach, and she's already working in many spaces, and her passion was so bright.
Palpable.
Of
Yeah.
I was looking at it, she was so bright, and she was so much with ideas, and she kept on throwing things. And when I left the interview, and I said, you have a book in making, because she was so inspiring. And
Mm.
then I said, you're speaking for this whole judgment that we've made, that somebody from Egypt or somebody from Saudi Arabia will not be a transformational coach, or will not be a transformational coach of that caliber. I could
Mm.
see she was 48 years old, and she said, I started at the age of 41. And
Yeah.
in my society, people think at 41 you're too old because they get married very early and then they have children and they're like, you're too old. And I'm like, no, I'm going to start now. And she feels alive when she hears psychologists, and she has so much to offer, Terri. And
Yeah.
that's where
That's so cool.
I realized it yesterday, because she was in her Muslim gear, sitting there talking about Allah. She was talking about connection to universe, talking
Yeah.
about God, and making a mark that even women here, and she's an architectural engineer, and her father was very forward looking and supported her in so many things. So why are we sitting here making judgments about mothers of any country, of any place, or
Yeah.
anywhere? And that's what this book will bring, stories out of stories from different countries and
Yeah.
different places, where we are going to be in awe of what we have been thinking is not true. We've been just thinking and judging and thinking. And yes, there are stories which are true, but not everybody is like that. And I was
Well, and think about how, we're so blessed. We may find things that we say, we're guilty about, or we don't, but we're so immensely blessed. I mean, think about the women right now in Afghanistan who are trying to decide, can they continue to work, or do they need to,
right,
reverse back to these archaic, positions. And, I've never had to face that.
right.
So, I think about that. I remember my first trip to Saudi Arabia, and I asked the guy at the hotel, would it be okay if I ran on the beach out in front of the hotel? And he said, well, no, you shouldn't run as a woman. And I said, well, then what time is the gym open? And he very politely but shyly said, well, it's only for men. And I just, everything in that first trip in Saudi Arabia, I remember thinking to myself, I know that there's a more conservative view, but this is ridiculous. This is, I can't be who I am. I can't do the things I want to do. Yeah.
And that's why it opened up yesterday for me, because she's sitting in Saudi Arabia trying to
Yeah.
do this. And that's
Well, in
why.
fact, on a positive story, on that same trip, I met with the group of women that worked for us. They were online field engineers.
Yep.
So they couldn't be in the field hospital, with interacting with men, but they could be online. And they were so excited we had a roundtable discussion, and I learned from them that they had so much passion, so much ambition. They wanted to do big things. They wanted me to understand they wanted to do big things. It was just a little bit harder in the way that, the norms were set up for their society, but they were, all of them, like, help us. We really want to go far. We want to do big things. We want to be like you, we want to have the chances that you've had. So I think women have a lot more ambition than we give credit to.
Right.
In that, I love I think it's Diana Nye, the woman that swam from Cuba to the US, the only only human who's swam from Cuba to the United States. But her quote is, what are you going to do with this one wild and precious life that you've been given?
I've heard.
I think that's a good reminder to, no matter what happens on a given day, just remember this is a gift we've been given and we should make the most of it.
Yes. And that's why I was telling you that book worked, because my child was saved. It was a superficial burn, and I was still like in tears. And then I looked at some of the stories where their mothers who had to leave with violence and other stuff, and what all has happened to them, and they've survived it, and now they're doing so well in their lives. If that's why this sentence, if they can do it, so can I. Like, if somebody sitting in Saudi Arabia can try to be so vibrant, what reason do I have not to be vibrant?
What excuse do I have, right? Yeah.
And if she says, like, within the constraints, she can shine, and she wants to live, and she wants to dream at the age of 48, and she wants to be like, she had a contagious energy of a 16-year-old. And I was just like, and she's like, nobody should be stopped from doing what they're doing. And all that, I'm like, wow, you're going live and saying all these things. And here are, like, I'm sitting in India with everything, all comforts, and do I have a reason to stop this project? No, not at all. We will go ahead and do it, and make this change. And anyway,
and sometimes that's all we need at a given point. That's all we need. We just need that little extra boost to say, come on, let's go.
I'm going to make sure these 100 stories do shine. And that's why I wanted to bring somebody like you as well, Terry, because I know that on a hindsight looks that we are all settled. Terry is sitting all settled at the age of 60, but it was an uphill task even at that time to take choices, to make choices. And then you had a vision to be in the corporate, but to make impact in the world through healthcare. And you have always had that vision that what's the bigger picture? What is the picture that will help more and more people in healthcare to access so that they can access all this healthcare in a cheaper way. And that's incredible, and that you still hold that dream even if you feel that you're retired or you're out of the corporate world. You still hold that dream because it shows that you lived your dream and you're holding it strong till the time you're there so that this happens. So I was very happy to hear that your dream is still the same. Your dream is still the healthcare dream, and not I've retired, my work is done. Now so much has to be done, and you're walking to that. So it's been incredible talking to you. I can keep talking to you for hours. I can keep talking about this project, mothers. We're just 20 more moms away before this book goes in full design mode and we start creating. I'm really looking forward to seeing your self-portrait and your expression. And I welcome you to this book with other mums and their mums in the comments, but I will reply to their comments because you're not on Facebook, and I will reply to them. Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you so much for being
my pleasure.
And don't go offline. I'm just going off live.
Okay. Okay.